jackets? School is closed this week for Inauguration Day. Inauguration Day is a special day that happens every 4 years in our country. On Inauguration Day, we have a ceremony to mark the start of a president's new term. This Inauguration Day is really special because we're getting a new president. We're also getting a new vice president. And this year is extra special with our new vice president because she's the first woman to ever be elected vice president. I think this is really exciting. And today we're going to read a book about a little girl who also finds the idea of a woman being president or vice president really exciting. Her name is Grace. Grace notices that there haven't been any women presidents before, and she decides she wants to do something about that. So Grace decides to run for president of her school. We're going to read this book to learn a little bit more about how Grace runs for president. As I read, you can be an active listener, so the story makes sense. Here we go. This is Grace for President, written by Kelly DiPuccio, pictures by Layuan Pham. Here's some of the pictures of the presidents that we've had in our country in the past, just some of them. Grace for President. One Monday morning in September, Mrs. Barrington rolled out a big poster with all the presidents' pictures on it. These are all the presidents we've had in our country. Grace Campbell could not believe her eyes. She looked at the pictures and she said, "Where are the girls? Where are all the girls?" These are the pictures of all the highest leaders that we've had in our country, and there's not a single girl or woman. "That is a very good question," said Miss Barrington. "The truth is, our country has never had a woman president." "No girl president ever?" Grace asked. "No, I'm afraid not," said Mrs. Barrington. Grace sat at her desk and stewed. She sat there and she was kind of mad about this. No girls? Who'd ever heard of such a crazy thing? Finally, she raised her hand. "Yes, Grace," said Mrs. Barrington. "I've been thinking it over, and I'd like to be president," said Grace. Several students in the class laughed. "Well, I think that's a star-spangled idea, Grace," said Mrs. Barrington. "In fact, we can have our own election right here at Woodrow Wilson Elementary." The snickering in the room stopped. The laughter stopped. Grace smiled. "Would anyone else like to run for president?" Mrs. Barrington asked the class, but nobody raised their hand. Becoming president was going to be easy, Grace thought. So she thinks it's going to be easy because no one else even wants to be president. Maybe she'll get to be president automatically. The next day, Mrs. Barrington made an announcement. "In the name of democracy, I have invited Mr. Waller's class to join our election." So another class is going to participate. Their class has nominated Thomas Cobb to be their presidential candidate. Grace's heart sank. She must be thinking, "Oh no, I thought I was going to get to automatically be president. But now someone else wants to be president too." Thomas was the school spelling bee champion. His experiments always took a blue ribbon at the science fair, and he was captain of the soccer team. Becoming president wasn't going to be so easy after all, Grace thought. The teachers put the names of all 50 states and the District of Columbia, that's us, into a hat. Everyone except for Grace and Thomas got to choose a state. "I'm Texas," said Anthony. "I'm New Hampshire," said Rose. "I'm Michigan," said Robbie. "What does the number 16 mean?" So he got the state of Michigan, and on his card there's a number 16. Each state is assigned a number of electoral votes. That number is determined by how many people live in that state, said Mrs. Barrington, and each of you will be a representative for your state. Altogether, our country has 538 electoral votes, Mr. Waller explained. On election day, the candidate who receives 270 electoral votes or more wins the election. Why 270? Asked Rose. That's more than half of all the electoral votes, Mr. Waller said. Becoming president really wasn't going to be so easy, Grace thought. Looks like she's feeling a little nervous or unsure now that she knows she has to win all of those electoral votes. Grace came up with a campaign slogan, "Make history, vote Grace Campbell for president." And Thomas came up with a campaign slogan too, "Vote for Thomas Cobb, the best man for the job." Grace listened to what issues were important to students, and she made a list of campaign promises. So she wanted to listen to all the kids to see what they needed at school. A peaceful school, no bullies. A cleaner school, no littering. Better hot lunches, no more fish stick tacos. Sounds pretty good. Thomas made up his own list of promises. Free tutoring, free soccer lessons, fish stick tacos every week. So they're each promising something different to the people who vote for them. Grace made campaign posters and buttons, and Thomas made posters and buttons too. They're both trying to get the most people to vote for them. Each week, the teachers set aside time for the candidates to meet with their constituents, all the people in the school who will be voting. Polls were taken, voters were making their choices. Grace continued to campaign. At recess, she gave speeches. During lunch, she handed out free cupcakes. And after school, she held rallies. Meanwhile, Thomas wasn't worried. He had cleverly calculated that the boys held slightly more electoral votes than the girls. So I guess he's thinking that the boys might vote for him and the girls will vote for Grace. At recess, Thomas studied his spelling words. During lunch, he worked on his latest science project. And after school, he played soccer. So Grace and Thomas are approaching this in really different ways. Grace is campaigning really hard. She's trying really hard to get everyone to vote for her. But Thomas, not really. He's just working on his spelling and his science projects and playing soccer just like he always did. Even before the election, Grace made good on her promises, so she did what she said she was going to do. She joined the safety squad, she organized a school beautification committee, and she volunteered her time in the school cafeteria. She looks pretty tired over here. She's been working really hard. In early November, Woodrow Wilson Elementary hosted a special Election Day assembly. Grace and Thomas took their places on stage as the school band began to play. Henry was the first representative to approach the microphone. The Yellowhammer State of Alabama cast its 9 electoral votes for Thomas Cobb. The last frontier state of Alaska cast its 3 electoral votes for the best man for the job, Thomas Cobb. The Grand Canyon state of Arizona cast its 11 electoral votes for Grace Campbell, Hannah called out. So now the student representatives are voting on behalf of their state. And so it went. State after state after state cast their electoral votes. The scoreboard in the gymnasium kept track of the totals. The voting demonstration was quickly coming to an end. Clara approached the podium. The Badger State of Wisconsin cast its 10 votes for my best friend, Grace Campbell. Grace looked at the scoreboard. Thomas had 268 electoral votes, and she had 267. There was only one state still unaccounted for. There's only one state left to vote, and Thomas is ahead by one electoral vote. Wyoming is the last state to vote. Let's see what he does. Thomas grinned. Grace felt sick. Sam walked up to the microphone. So remember how Thomas thought the boys would vote for him? Sam is walking up to the microphone. And Grace feels really sick thinking about how the last person to vote is a boy. He looked at Thomas and he looked at Grace. He looked down at Grace's handmade flag. Sam didn't say a word. "What are you waiting for?" Thomas whispered. The band stopped playing. All eyes were on Wyoming. Finally, Sam cleared his throat. Remember that the kids are voting on behalf of their state. So Sam is voting on behalf of the whole state of Wyoming, and he says, "The equality state of Wyoming cast its 3 electoral votes for Grace Campbell." The gymnasium erupted in loud cheers and a few boos. Mrs. Barrington approached the podium. "With 270 electoral votes, the winner is Grace Campbell." Thomas looked stunned. Grace hugged Sam. "Why did you do it?" she asked. Sam handed Grace his flag. "Because," he said, "I thought you were the best person for the job." The following week, students in Mrs. Barrington's class were preparing for their career day presentations. Grace volunteered to go first. She stood at the front of the room and glanced at the poster still hanging on the wall. So the kids are going to tell each other what they want to be when they grow up, their careers or their jobs. Grace says, "My name is Grace Campbell, and when I grow up, I'm going to be President of the United States." This time, everyone believed that she would. And this looks like a snapshot into the future. Maybe an imagined future, maybe the real thing. This is a picture of our Capitol building, and this is exactly where the inauguration will take place this week. I hope you enjoyed our story today, Grace for President. Makes me feel really excited to think about a girl or a woman becoming president, being the very first one. And this week we get to celebrate Kamala Harris becoming the very first woman to be vice president. All right, Rockets, I'll see you next time. Bye.